Welcome back. Today on Self-Love Ignited, I am interviewing Conny Graf, and we talk all about how decluttering is really an expression of self-love. Now, Conny came on to share her personal journey with us. She is from Switzerland. She has been living in Canada for many years, and she talks about growing up, her childhood, dealing with bullying, and the natural progression to self-awareness and how she came to help people clear clutter as an adult. And clearing clutter is not about purging and organizing. It's really about exploring and releasing the limiting beliefs we tell ourselves and the stories that keep us stuck in the past. She says that decluttering is self-love, and just a few minutes a day can really keep the chaos away. And she talks about the inner chaos and the outer chaos. It is different words than sometimes other people use to talk about self-love, and it's a really beautiful and unique take on it. So if you want a little more insight into self-love, if you feel like you are drowning in clutter, listen in. Conny is an absolute joy to speak with, and she has some great insights and tips for us to begin.
My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self-Love Ignited. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Self-Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I am interviewing Conny. Conny, I am so excited to have you here and finally have this conversation. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody?
Thank you, Katie, for having me. So kind. So I'm Conny, or Conny Graf, and I'm originally from Switzerland, but I live here in Vancouver, BC, Canada, on the West Coast. And what else shall I tell you? So I did have the travel bug, and I used to think I needed to live somewhere else than in Switzerland. And now I'm here and I'm loving it, but I'm homesick too. So that's maybe something. So there is never just one shade. There is always both. And and what I do is, so I originally became a Swiss certified accountant controller. So in the finance world, but I was always kind of aware of how our surroundings make us feel. And I was always a very organized person, which was interesting to me how people were surprised about that. So here in Canada, I help people mostly being organized and decluttering, and not in a Marie Kondo way, but more in a, and we talk about more about this because one of my sayings is decluttering is self-love. So more in a self-love way, more in a how does the environment affect me? How do I create an environment that is supportive to me rather than hindering me on what I want to do? And I always say, like, I'm not the typical bean counter, like AKA bookkeeper, accountant, or I'm for sure not a professional organizer or anything. I live on acreage with horses, dogs, cats, chickens. But I live what I preach to create the surroundings in a way that support us and what is important to us. So
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we have, I mean, you and I have spoken at length. We have so much in common, which is like really, it's always amazing to find somebody else where we're like so in alignment with everything. Like it's awesome. And that's one reason that I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, you know. So this podcast is all about self-love, right? It's called Self-Love Ignited, and it really is focusing on stories. So Conny, I want to hear your story. You know, so I just really want to invite you to tell your story of your challenges with yourself, your body, your inner ecosystem, your inner world, whatever you like to call it. Where did your challenges with yourself start? How did that show up in your life?
Yeah, I do believe it started, or that's how far back I could trace it so far, was when we used to live near Zurich until I was about 4.5 years old. I was already in kindergarten there. I have very fond memories of that kindergarten time. Life seemed still good then.
Mhm.
And then my parents bought a house, and they wanted their children to grow up not in an apartment, but in a house. And we moved to the suburbs of Zurich into a little village. And I don't even remember, but probably less than 1,000 people lived in that little village.
Mhm.
Most were locals. And it just started that outsiders, so to say, moved there. And so from the beginning, I didn't belong. They were bullying me for being from Zurich. I couldn't go into the kindergarten there because they said nobody can go into kindergarten until the new school year starts. So I was all by myself all of a sudden. And so that's probably when it started that I felt something is wrong with me, because like from being in kindergarten, having neighbors, children, I could go outside at any time, and there were children, we could play and drive our bicycles. I remember that, or tricycles or bicycles, and we played ball and everything. I got to this place where nobody wanted to talk with me, and they openly bullied me. My mother went to work, and we were living in the same house. My grandparents were also living. And actually, when I think back, I probably didn't even really know them that well. I was just all of a sudden with my grandparents, nothing against them, but it was just like a lot of changes. And the outside world just became really hostile in a way, like when I think back.
Yeah.
And then it didn't get better at all. So then finally I was in kindergarten, but there was, again, like, she's from Zurich, we're not talking with her, she doesn't belong here. Then I got to school, and then when I was in first grade, they realized that I don't see very well, so I had to have glasses. I was the only one, including teachers, that had glasses. So you can imagine the bullying didn't get better.
Yeah.
So by that time, I think that was when I was 7. So between 4.5 and 7, I got for sure the message that something is totally wrong with me. That, and that self-love, I don't know. I don't know, as a child, it's like in the beginning, I think when you look at little children, they're all in love with themselves, and somehow at one point we get the message that something is wrong with us. And I think that's probably where it happened. I don't know whether it was for earlier in my life, but that's for sure how far I remember. And so then between 1st and 5th grade, there was constant kind of struggle. And I think when I got in high school, I had to change the class because the teacher was even bullying me. So and then things started to get better. I remember, like, when I was then in a new class and everything, things started to get better, but only kind of like superficial better. Mm-hmm. It's like I could manage, I could pretend, I learned to have the mask on, and inside it was just war and like self-loathing and all that. So it sounds like a dark story, but it's literally like when people think back to their childhoods and they think, oh, that was so beautiful. Actually, no, I was so glad I was finally an adult, but it didn't get better. It was lots of numbing going on, lots of pretending, lots of having masks on. Mm-hmm. Not speaking up, with glasses on. Of course, dating was out of the question, because who would want to date someone that looks like a frog, with glasses? And then I remember, and that almost made me angry too, because I then got contacts when I was 19, I believe. And it was so crazy because all of a sudden I had to go to work with public transit. And all of a sudden, from one day to the next, I was noticed. Like, because before nobody looks at somebody with glasses, so you forget it. And then all of a sudden I was noticed. And that was hard because like I knew exactly why I get noticed, because I don't wear glasses, which made me angry, but at the same time made me very overwhelmed and insecure, because I always thought like, well, the glasses kept me from being noticed, but now the glasses are gone, and now the people will see how bad I am, how wrong I am, how whatever. Yeah. So I would love to tell the story. Oh yeah, that I got contacted and the world was all wonderful.
Well, it sounds
Didn't
like
happen that way.
Yeah, it sounds like by that point, like your glasses, though they were the cause of, or they sort of made like the bullying worse, they had also become a bit of a crutch, right? They were the shield that you hid behind.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Yeah, you could probably say it that way. Yeah. It gave you an excuse to hide and hide and hide more. Yes. It's and it's like, and you become aware how shallow the world is. So one of the things is like, when you go in Switzerland, when you went from primary school or 5th grade to high school, we had, I think the school system is different now, but back then you had 3 options. You either go to the one where the kids go with the good grades, or you go to the one where the kids go with the mediocre grades, or you go to the school where the kids go that have bad grades. Okay. And because I had glasses and I was very insecure, I wouldn't speak up, I wouldn't interact in classroom, everybody thought, well, she goes to the one where the people are a little dumb, no? But my grades and the tests that we had to do showed that I actually can go to the school with the people with the good grades. And I remember people telling me, well, you're wrong there, you can't go there, you have glasses, you're dumb, and so in one way I have a little bit of a rebellious side in me. So in one way I was rebellious, and I thought, I show you that I can be there. Yeah. But at the same time, it just reinforced this whole insecurity, and then when you all of a sudden don't have the glasses, then you have no excuse. Right.
Yeah. So how did you go then from that like 19, 20-year-old who just got contacts and then is having these like realizations about this? How did you go from that like to where you are today? What did sort of adulthood look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I think there was a lot of lying to myself and just keeping also the facade up. I'm a people pleaser, so you're just it got for sure easier. So when you fit in more into society, life in one way gets easier, but the more you fit into these structures, the more you maybe lie to yourself. So it hasn't been until about maybe 10 years ago or so that I actually started to realize, oh, wait a second, most people don't really know me. They just know the persona that I created to fit in. And so, yeah, that is that's an ongoing process. I would say I'm way better than I used to be. I'm way more aware of when I always call it the gremlin, when the gremlin hopped onto my shoulder and is speaking lies into my ear. But of course, I still catch myself. I'm still like, depending on where I am emotionally in any day, depending on what happened, I can find myself right away again. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, they think I'm dumb, or I'm right back at the little 7-year-old, unless I'm very aware. And so, yeah, I would say it's like it's probably gonna haunt me till the end of my days, but I'm for sure better. But it's it's ongoing, let's say.
It is ongoing. And this journey, this ongoing journey, this evolution of what's happening inside of you, does this feel like a journey of self love? Like, does that term resonate with you? Is it self-acceptance, self-discovery? Like, what feels true for you?
It's all of it, I think.
Mm.
So I think we can't even get to self-love if we don't get to self-acceptance at all. Just this I don't like the word too much, but it's kind of like, it's a little bit like surrendering, realizing one day that this is how I am, and this is not good or bad. This is just how I am. And I either continue fighting against it, or I start accepting it. And that doesn't mean we're becoming jerks or anything. Like, I want to make sure, but just that, or bitches, just that learning that all this fighting just makes things worse. And yeah, so I think it's all of it. It's self-discovery, self-acceptance, and then you get to self-love. And I'm the first one who says decluttering is self-love, but on the other hand, self-love is a huge term that most people don't even know what that even means. But just this being kind and compassionate to yourself, how you would be to other human beings, is I think already a big step, you know, because what we experienced maybe when this all started with the self-loathing, what we experienced from the outside, we internalize, and then we do it to ourselves, but probably about 100 times worse. And just to start dismantling this will make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. I always say, like, we have bullies. I was also bullied as a child. So we have bullies on the outside, and they pick and they pick and they pick and they pick. And then, we change schools, or we go up a grade, or whatever happens in childhood, and suddenly the bullies are gone. And it's like our inner voice just goes, oh, don't worry, I got this, I'll take over. And it just chimes in, and it just keeps the story going. So even though those external bullies are gone, we become our own bully, right? Our subconscious takes that on.
Yeah, our worst bully, is than we are. And because we don't know better, or because we thought we were so impressionable when it all started, that we couldn't make a difference between, no, that's just what they're thinking, that's not who I am. And I think parents back then were also less aware than maybe these days, and couldn't help, or didn't know even to help. I remember my mom saying to me, well, if they are mean to you, then you must have done something wrong. That was her logic, which was very hurtful for me. I remember, because then I was not understood at home either. So it's like, but I don't blame her now as an adult, because I know she didn't know better. And that was her logic. Well, if they're not nice to you, you must have done something wrong. And so it just got so ingrained that we become our worst enemy and our worst critic.
Yeah,
for sure.
We do. So on this journey that you have been on, and that you are still on, what tools or practices, like, how have you done this essentially? Have you meditated? Are you doing yoga? Do you journal? Have you been to therapy? Like what have you actually done that has helped you?
Yeah. So when I was in my 20s and probably also early 30s, I would write a lot. Today we would call it journaling. Back then we didn't call it journaling, but I would just write a lot. And I always said, like, if I write it down, I can sort my thoughts. And once you see it, and that was just, you're a little younger than me, so you may not have the same experience, but that was just when computers became a commodity and everybody had one. So it was really awesome, because my thoughts are racing all the time. So when I want to write down something, I have to be fast, and I'm very fast on a keyboard. So I would type pages and pages and pages about my thoughts, and then I would go back and reread it and rearrange it. And that's how I would get my thoughts in my brain to behave, let's say.
Okay. Yeah.
Got them, but it was very regimental. And then when I came to Canada, it was more like through nature. I would not, back then, I do yoga, but not like I go to yoga every day of the week or something. I do yoga, I do some yoga, and I do some meditation now. For the last 2 years, I meditated every day. But it was always hard because my brain is racing like crazy. So if I can do something while I'm trying to figure out my thoughts, is always better. And then also one thing that helped me a lot, and that might be very personal to me, but when I as a child, I always wanted to learn to horseback ride, and I was not allowed to. My parents said, you have to study in school and concentrate on school. This is just a distraction. So I was not allowed. And then somehow it took until I was 33 years old that I actually would say, okay, now I want to learn to ride. And it was terrifying. I was not necessarily terrified of the horse, but once I was on the horse, I was terrified because I felt I have no control. And when we think about it, a horse is very powerful. If the horse doesn't want, the horse doesn't want. You can't use muscles. You have to use your inner strength. And that learning, and I was three or four times in the riding lesson where I would get off the horse and say, I can't do it. And I would walk away. And my stubborn brain luckily got me back. And so I learned an inner strength, not to dominate the horse, but to gain the horse's trust to actually be able then. So I gained the horse's trust at the same time I trusted the horse, and then we could go riding together. And I believe this is one of the things that helped me a lot. Because animals don't judge, or that's maybe not 100% true. Animals are so honest, so they reflect you. So you notice right away whether you are in your critical self, whether you are in your self-loathing, or whether you are in a clean, I call it clean, in a clean space. Yeah. And the horse reacts to you right away. Yeah. And so that helped me to be aware of all this war that was going on constantly. And then also, yeah, still with writing, I'm not as obsessed with writing anymore like I used to be, but I feel like it's because I have this mirror of a horse, of my horses now too, that show me right away, your energy is off, something is off. They react not to your words, they react to your thoughts, your energy. So
yeah, I love that. So one thing, I don't actually usually even share this, it's just not something I talk about. I rode horses almost every day from the time I was 10 until I was about 17 or 18. That was the thing that helped me through adolescence and through high school. It's it was my identity for years.
Yeah.
And it's only in just listening to you say that right now that I'm going, that's the self-awareness. I think that's where I got it from, because I was taught as a kid, like it is about how you go in. And I was a little 10-year-old, and I was in, I was in a field with like 50 big horses. And if they didn't want to listen, you cannot. Exactly. Anybody who has ever been around a horse knows that if they don't want to do it, they won't do it. You can't make them.
You can't make them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
And that was also the first time, like when I finally got to the point, and also with my horse now, we're actually really, I trust her. And I was riding, and I wasn't terrified anymore being on her. That was I always say, like, heaven on earth for me is horseback riding. But not with every horse, because some horses are still very intimidating to me, because I can fall back into this being scared. But with her, where my brain stopped thinking, like, if you have never experienced that before, when your brain was always racing, and this is where my brain stops thinking. The only place I found so far, meditation doesn't help. Like, I get distracted, and I do it with the Headspace app, and it's so cute when he's talking in my ear again and say, if you're distracted, come back to your breath. And I'm like, how did you know that? and on the horse, that's basically the only place where I can quiet down my brain. And so, yeah, that was a big help for me.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your journey into your decluttering into starting your own business, because you told us before that you started in finance. That was your thing. That was the career path that you went down. Clearly you are not currently still on that career path. You've changed, and you talk a lot about the connection between self-love and decluttering. So tell us about that, your business and what you do and how this came about and how it's related to your own journey.
Yeah. So going into finance was not my choice. It was basically, let's say, imposed to me by my parents out of their concern and goodwill. So they wanted me to learn something proper and to have a good career, which most parents probably want for their children. So not blaming them. And so I ended up in an insurance company, which was kind of interesting. And then I slid into finance because it turned out that I'm actually quite good with numbers. And I always say, like, when people are surprised that organizing and decluttering and finance, that I feel that is the same and they can't comprehend that. And I always say, like, in finance, you create order out of lots of numbers. So it's creating order and gaining clarity out of creating that order. So when I was, so it turned out I was pretty good at it. The only thing that I wasn't so good at it was working in the corporate environment. That's not really, I was like, I could handle it. I was called the tough cookie, but I was called the tough cookie because I had this, like, I can't put up this tough facade, which is not very healthy and very exhausting. So I was pretty soon became self-employed. At least I had control over myself, and I would hire myself out as a consultant, still doing finance. But what I noticed was that I'm more and more helping people too with just creating supportive environments and creating organization, not just in their numbers, but it's like most people have an issue with filing, and it's not the most exciting thing, I agree, but it makes life so much easier if you have some kind of an organization in your files. Or also the desk, like most people had just horrendous cluttered desks and were then surprised that they can't concentrate on the work. And so it was kind of slipping into it. Although if we back up a little bit, when I was growing up, because I had no friends, because nobody wanted to have anything to do with me, the animals in the woods were my friends. Or I just noticed too how the environment has an effect on us. So I would, in my little room that I was fortunate enough to have my own room growing up, I would say, oh, what happens if I put the desk over here? Or what happens if I move the bed like this? And then I would just pay attention to myself, not knowing what I'm doing. It was just like, because I had no friends, I had to have something to do maybe, or I don't know, we can think whatever, but that's just how it started. And so then as a consultant, I helped them reorganize, maybe like, oh yeah, well, if you would put the desk over there, then you wouldn't have to get up every time to do this. Or if you would organize it this way, it would make your life so much easier. And then, so that's how it, from the finance, then I added the kind of helping to organize the environment. Okay. And then when I moved to Canada, my finance degree was not recognized here. And I really didn't feel that was my dream occupation, to go through the whole becoming a CPA or CMA or whatever again. So then I thought, well, maybe just let's help them with their environment. So like, I still help with numbers too. We can organize numbers so much easier, which makes then your life so much easier. But it's also about the environment, to organize that. And then I took some extra training on how the clutter is actually more a representation of what's going on inside of us, which was like, duh, yes, but kind of like, you know how you sometimes know something, but you don't even know, you know, it's kind of like, so this was kind of like Yeah. And so that's when I started to say decluttering is self-love, because it's just whatever goes out on the outside is just a kind of like a representation what's going on the inside. And it's an effect or a materialization maybe of what we're doing. So, and this can happen either with clutter. Some people have a lot of clutter. Others are more representing it with weight gain. Others do it with other addictions, like maybe alcohol, smoking, drugs. Whenever we need some kind of a coping mechanism, it has something to do with us inside. So yeah, and so I'm just going more and more into this. Yes, it's about practical organization, but we can organize all we want over and over and over until we're actually solving the issue, why it's such a mess on the outside, or a chaos, how I call it. We're just exhausting ourselves with fixing the outside. Right. Okay, that was a very long answer, sorry.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. That was good. So to sum it up, you help people organize the chaos on the outside and deal with the chaos on the inside. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of my most favorite sayings, since came across it somewhere in my early 20s, is from Hermes Trismegistus, who says, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. So now this is thousands and thousands of years old, this saying. What it basically says is whatever goes on the inside represents itself on the outside. And you can start on both ways. You can start with the outside, which will have an effect on the inside, and then you can work on the inside and it has an effect on the outside. And so this is very, very old saying from the Hermetic laws. And a long time this was considered woo-woo, but now I love quantum physics and quantum mechanics and science. And now they can actually prove it that it's true. And so, yes, I help people clean up their outer clutter, but oftentimes we actually have to start on the inner clutter. But it depends from person to person. With some, we have to start with the outer clutter before they even let themselves get to the inner clutter. Yes. And with other people, we have to start with the inner clutter that they even can start doing something in the outer world.
Yeah. That makes sense, because we are all unique, right? And we all have our own stories and our own fears. And so of course the approach is going to be different for everybody. Yeah. If there is somebody listening to this who is, maybe where you were years ago, maybe still at the beginning of this journey, maybe really afraid, maybe their thoughts are just pure chaos inside their head and they don't know what to do, or whatever it happens to be, is there one exercise or practice or something that you would recommend to somebody else to start with?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, because like everybody is different. And but so one I think, so everything starts with awareness. Now, however you do this, like for me, the start of the awareness was writing everything down like a maniac, and then actually reading it again and maybe thinking like, this is a little harsh, or this makes no sense, or whatever, or looking at it through the lens of a friend. What would I say a friend if they would tell me this? So I feel like the awareness, and then maybe when you have, so most people struggle with this negative self-talk and all this, and ask yourself, who is talking to, or how old am I when I say it? Like, who says it? And this is not to blame it on anybody, just who said it or who says it, whose voice is it? Because it's often not our voice, it's what came. And then how old am I? And realizing that maybe when this started, you had no choice because you were young, but now we have a choice. And also to understand that these thoughts are not necessarily the truth, and we don't have to, like, I love when I heard this the first time, and I don't know who started this, so I can't give proper credit, but the sentence, you don't have to believe everything you think.
Yeah.
And just there, start there. And also in combination with that, how does it make me feel? So my mentor always says, like, is this thought serving you or not? And oftentimes these thoughts are not serving us in any way. But there's a caveat. Sometimes it's serving us because it's protecting us from getting out of our comfort zone. So just by starting to understand, is it serving me? Yes or no? And if yes, in what way? And just awareness, awareness, awareness. Now, of course, that's not very practical because we can get, if we're not careful, we can get tripped up in that loop. So so for me, and this is where I often use astrology to help people, because we figure out what is our core. And so I have a lot of fire inside of me. So I know from you, from an earlier discussion, that you have a lot of fire too. So I often need to move. So if I can move, I get out of my head into my body. I can realize how it makes me feel. And then I become more sane in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everybody is like this. Others may be more in like if somebody has a lot of water, they may actually have to cry to get to the point where they understand. It's so personal. But yeah, awareness, and then figuring out from there what helps.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, you've given a few little examples there that, and we can try. And I think sometimes, working with somebody else, working with a mentor, we can guide you right into what might help. Mm-hmm. But I mean, those are all things that you can try right now. And through observation, you can figure out what feels best. Does it feel best for me to write it out? Does it feel best for me to cry? Does it feel best for me to move? Right? Like we can, those are all things that are sort of at your fingertips that you can try.
And I feel too like we have to dive deeper. That's just now came to me when you were talking, because we hear this a lot, like, oh, we don't have to believe our thoughts, or as within, so without. We have heard that maybe like there is other words that basically say the same thing. But unless we're letting that really sink in and understand, like one thing my mentor always says, and that can make me really angry if I'm in a bad place, is she's like, whatever happens is neutral. Only what you make it mean is what torments you. And if you're not in a good place, this can make you really angry. What do you mean? This is real. And just to realize that if you reframe it with your thoughts, that it actually the pain lessens, or that you're feeling better. And that's why I love the thought, is it serving me or not? Like how is it serving me?
Yeah. Beautiful. Conny, if there's somebody listening who wants to get in touch with you, if they want to find out more about you or your story, or how to do some of this amazing work with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, it's probably my website. I just have to be always telling you, here in North America, most people write my name wrong. So my website is connygraf.com, but Conny with a Y. So it's CONNY@GRAF.com. Most people write it with an IE, and then you don't end up on my website. And so, so that's the hub. There you can contact me, or you also find my podcast there, or you go and search for my podcast. It's called From Chaos to Peace with Conny with a Y. And my favorite social media platform, if you want to find me rather on social media, would be Instagram. It's I was late bloomer to Instagram. I'm only on Instagram since 2018, I think, but I like it actually now the best of all the social media platforms. And there my handle is I am Conny Graf.
Okay, beautiful. And I'll make sure to put all of the links to that in the show notes as well. So it'll be really easy, so that nobody can accidentally do the Conny with an IE and then they can't find you. Well, I'll make sure that it's all correct.
Yeah, it's just because most people write their name with IE here, and then and in Switzerland, actually, Conny is almost always written with a Y. So I had to learn. I learned that only when I came to North America, that this is something unusual.
Yeah. So Conny, as we're getting ready to wrap up, I'm just, I'm curious, is there any last bits of wisdom, any other thoughts, anything else that you feel called to say about self-love?
Yeah. So may sound again a little woo-woo, but to me, everything is connected. So if some of your listeners are struggling with self-love, then it's connected to so many things. It's like, find out how it represents itself in the outer world. And again, we can start on the outside or on the inside to fix it, and fix it. That's maybe not a kind word, but that's what we want. No, we want to fix ourselves, but to fix the wrong thinking maybe. And so, yeah. And also the second thing I want to say to that is, it's not an event, it's a journey. So I have a podcast episode where I tell my clients that deal with clutter, and they don't love to hear that. I always say decluttering is not an event, it's a journey. And it's I don't want to say a never-ending journey. It's just a journey where you come to new levels, and there is always something to be aware of and to better our life. So yeah, just go on the journey, take the first steps and go at your own pace, and start inside and outside, and you will get there. It can only get better if you start a journey.
Yes, that's it, right? It can only get better. You just have to begin. Yeah, you just have to choose it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Conny, we're going to leave it there. I couldn't think of a better way to end. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your energy and your wisdom and your time with myself and all of my listeners.
Thanks so much, Katie.
All of the links mentioned during the episode are down in the show notes. Please make sure to go on over and check them out. Also, please remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and I would be forever grateful if you would go on over and leave us a review on iTunes as well. That's going to help this message reach more women. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Here is to you loving yourself.